Poetry slam. The women were getting rowdy. It was partly the alcohol's fault, and partly the fact that all the women were, in general, rowdy. They'd been sitting in the mess for a few hours at least, talking, drinking, and telling stories. Jack had just gotten back from Pragia, and she and Jane had settled down for a talk, and then gathered a crowd. There was a lot of cackling. Kasumi, Tally, Kelly had settled in, and even Karen Shakwas had been lured out of the medbay. Miranda had declined, and that was fine by Jane. Miranda was not her favorite person, and she seemed unwilling to socialize, to break down the wall of discipline and perfection she seemed to want to erect. Erect. Funny word. Okay, she was drunk. Really drunk. She was drifting a little bit until she heard Tally say, "Whose voice do you like more, Garrus or Thane?" Jack answered, "Do I have to like 'em for their voices? Can I pick something else?" Tally shook her head emphatically. "No. Voice." Jane flashed through their voices. Garrus had once said, "If there's anything else I can do to help, anything, just tell me what you want me to do, and I'll do it." Her thighs squeezed together. She'd known he'd been talking about Saren, but his emphasis on the word anything had taken her to an entirely different place. She'd felt unintentionally turned on and almost irritated with his naive plea. Then had come finding him on Omega, hearing his rough, tired voice and being so overjoyed to find him, taken aback at the teasing in his voice. "Besides, you were taking your own sweet time. I needed to get you moving." Well, it had worked. It had gotten her moving and thinking. He was no longer so earnest that she felt she'd be taking advantage of her position, afraid he was so Turian he wouldn't dream of saying no to a superior officer. Not that the idea of not being able to say no didn't have its own appeal. Okay, she was really, really drunk. Then there was Thane. He had the easy, fluid strength born of solitude and confidence. And then there were his hands. Don't think about his hands. Crap. I thought about his hands. His voice had warmth and measured restraint that broke and revealed the man underneath, to be covered up at the next word. He spoke with none of the camouflage and humor or defensiveness of other people she knew, even herself. He spoke, or he did not speak, and he told her no enough that she perversely wanted to hear yes. "Yes, Thane, you should talk to me." She hadn't acted on it, once again unwilling to press a command advantage where one did not belong. What did it say about her that she'd been interested in him from the moment she'd seen him drop to the floor and kill several people within seconds? Let's say she had a healthy libido and fantasy life. She needed it on this ship. Kelly was saying, "They could both read the ship manifest. By the time they got to my name, I'd be gone." Let's find out." "What? What? No!" "Now we're talking." Karen took another sip of her drink, and Kasumi looked like she was readying her Omni-tool to record. Resourceful people, her crew. Jane called Garrus and Thane over, and they stood curiously, Jack looking at them appraisingly, leaning back like a contented pasha, Tally looking like she would like to escape. Jane told them, "Tally has a question." Tally sputtered, and Jane held up a hand. "Tally has a question, but now we all have a question." Tally subsided into embarrassed horror, but she didn't run away, so there must be some fascination in there. Or she was too drunk to get up. Maybe a combination. Jane told them, We were wondering which one of you had the better voice." Garrus, visibly startled, brow plates drawn together, and his eyes went to Tally, taking in the polite or impolite gazes of the women at the table, none of them backing down. And then his gaze went back to Jane. "You were wondering? And what's the consensus?" Thane said, "Yes. Has it been put to a vote?" Jane waved her hand. "Well, no, we haven't yet. I thought I'd give you gentlemen an opportunity to influence us, although Kelly said you could read the ship manifest." Well, yeah, but they can do better, right?" Garrus's brow went even higher, and Thane smiled slightly. Jane continued, "All right, we are drunk, but we are curious." "So because you're drunk?" "Because we're drunk, you can either take advantage of us in our weakened state of curiosity or go calibrate something." "Well, if you put it that way." Thane said, "And what is the reward for such a wager?" "Just knowing you took advantage of us in our weakened state. Sober, we might not be as appreciative." Kelly said, "I'd be very appreciative. Sober." Jack said, "Don't listen to Kelly. Not like that's news. I've seen you both checking out Shepard's ass when we're out on missions. Don't even try to deny it. Time for some payback." Garrus shrugged. "Well, it is a nice ass. There are a few perks to my job." "Why, Mr. Vakarian, how you do turn a girl's head." "Thankfully, not that often in this case." Thane's lips twitched, and Jane could tell they were both in. Kasumi said, "The question is, what material to use? That's up to them. They could go with the manifest or go with something better suited to the occasion." "Okay. Krios, I've got something in mind. How about you?" Thane inclined his head. "I believe I have something sufficient to the competition." "Mind if I go first?" Thane indicated yield in the floor with a hand. Karen said, "They're so polite." Garrus walked with a slight swagger to stand behind Tally, and he put his hands on her shoulders. She visibly jumped, and he smirked briefly, looked to Shepard to catch her grin, and then lowered his head to speak at her helmet, where her ear would be. "It wasn't when I first saw you that I loved you, fool that I am. I was born from the hard soil of Palaven, and my eyes were not wise. It was not when I first heard you that I loved you, for your voice was so different from those I had known. My ears were not wise. It was when I saw you act, when I saw you in the world, that my heart awoke to knowing that there was nothing so fine." His eyes strayed to Shepard again, and even her foggy mind could pick out what this was from. Fleet and Flotilla. This was the monologue of the Turian declaring his love for a Quarian woman. Tally was visibly trembling. Shepard was on her way there. Jack was grinning. Kelly looked about ready to fall over. Kasumi was recording avidly, and Karen had a delighted smile on her face. "Nothing so dear as to watch you act from your heart, to give of yourself, to risk your life, and look to the future. Forgive this hardened and dull Turian for not knowing immediately that the greatest thing he could do with his heart would be to give it to you." When Garrus released her shoulders and stood up, Tally thunked her head down dramatically on the table. Jack laughed and started to clap, And then everyone was clapping, including the stragglers who had stopped by to watch, even Thane. Garrus bowed, and Jane clapped enthusiastically. Damn, Vakarian! I'm impressed. Garrus rubbed Tally's shoulders comfortingly, as though to apologize for embarrassing the hell out of her, and said, I'm at an advantage. I'm not sure Thane can pull a popular movie out of his pocket about a drell and someone of another race. Thane shook his head. Nothing so well known, of course. It is not likely anybody here has heard drell poetry. Drell poetry was never translated into other languages, and this was a huge breach of tradition. Garrus objected. Oh, come on! He's lying. He's just going to make something up. He's not going to risk. Thane raised a brow and said, I'm not going to risk. Oh, never mind. I imagine the last thing you need to worry about is a cultural attaché to rap you on the wrist for a historical transgression. Indeed, that is my thinking as well. In order to censure me, they must find me. And as long as Miss Godot does not post her video, absolutely not. Private stock. I get a copy, of course. On it. That's right, it's just cultural exchange for the condemned. Jack said, Finally, something good for being about to die. Thane inclined his head and said, Of course. He sat down on the edge of the table, looking at Jane, almost close enough to touch his hip to her arm. She could feel the heat radiate from his body. Draw your eyes to me, my love, that you will remember always what you see in mine, that love brightens and warms like the sun to the sand, that your doubts flee before the strength of that warmth. Draw your hands to me, my love, and feel what belongs to you, my strength and resolve at your command. Draw your lips to mine, my life, that you would taste the man that is yours, a man who will remember your eyes, your hands, your lips as God's granted gifts, always treasured, never lost. There was a long pause, and Jane was speechless, nearly reaching out her hand to him, interrupted by Jack saying, Oh, hell yeah. There was laughter and clapping. Kelly vigorously mummed, fanning herself. Garrus's hands were stilled, but were on Tally's shoulders, and she was not considering asking him to take them off. Karen clapped, and the spell was broken. Thane inclined his head briefly and stood, patiently awaiting the verdict. Garrus said, Oh, come on, that's not fair. None of this is fair, Garrus. We're drunk as hell. I'm not sure I remember your names. Who are you guys? Thane laughed, and Garrus said, The saviors of the galaxy, apparently. Come on now. Don't write a check with your mouth that you can't cash. Apparently, I can write really big checks with my mouth. Jack said, Ooh, big talk. Okay, I vote Garrus. Karen said, Thane has my vote. I vote for Garrus. Garrus squeezed her shoulders, continued to massage them. I believe I have been unfairly influenced. Thane smiled at that, and Garrus smirked. Kelly said, I have to vote Thane. Kasumi said, I'm a huge Fleet and Flotilla fan. I have to go with Garrus. Eyes turned to Jane, and she thought a moment. and then said, Okay, I'm gonna vote for Thane. Garrus looked slightly disappointed until she said, Only because I have to make it a tie. There's no way either of you gentlemen should lose that. Well, I can live with that. You okay with that, Krios? Of course. And I could not be in better company. He was looking at Jane when he said that. Oh, shit. She now had a lot to think about, and fuel for fantasies to last likely for the rest of her statistically short life. Thane and Garrus turned to speak to those on the fringes that had come by to congratulate them and comment. Jack leaned in and said, Come on, Shepard, pick one so we can figure out who gets the other one. I'm seriously not sure I can do anything but think we have a tie here. That's selfish as hell. You know that? I'm allowed to have a dying wish. This would be your second dying wish, right? Yeah, the first one was, Fuck, I need air. Tally's head jerked up, and Jane was afraid she'd shocked everyone into silence until Karen started to chuckle, and then Jack let out a deep belly laugh, and even Kelly joined in. Tally's shoulders were trembling, and she was trying not to laugh, but she failed. Come on, Shepard. You can't have both of them. It's usually not a good thing to give me a challenge like that. If I can talk Saren into shooting himself in the head, I can probably wrangle a few friends into bed. Especially after that performance.